On the latest episode of Political Perspective with Bullet, featuring B, three exclamation points.
Heard in the news about El Salvador, and they're housing our, some of the criminals, not criminal, well, that's the absolute wrong word. They have been housing, some of them are criminals, right? Some of them have been charged with crimes. However, El Salvador is paid about $3 million, which seems like a small amount of money, but they're paid $3 million to house these folks that the Trump administration have been picking up through deportation. And one of the most kind of egregious acts involved a guy that lived in Florida. His name was Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Mhm.
And most people have heard that name. And what's kind of egregious about that situation is that it was a court order that the judge ordered them to first off turn the plane around, or they ordered them to not even to transport these people without any type of due process. So
Mhm.
you may have heard that name in the news. But recently, the El Salvador president came, spoke with Trump in the Oval Office. I thought it was funny. He came there looking almost kind of almost like a mob gangster, just
He
with,
he
but
he looked he looked like he was managing a club in Vegas.
yes, I mean he just looked like greasy and like slick. Like he looked like that type of person, right?
Right.
Like Manny from Scarface, like that
Right.
type of, yeah, just that type of like smooth like Spanish guy. And what I thought was funny was there was all of this conversation about President of Ukraine, Zelensky, not wearing a tie when he was in the Oval Office. They were kind of giving him a bunch of crap about it. But here it is, another president and one of the reasons why Zelensky doesn't wear a tie is because his country's in the middle of a war, so he's wearing the regular clothes. And putting on a suit, he might have to duck in a bunker, right? So, there was a lot of kind of like MAGA folks who were upset because they didn't think that Zelensky was representing the office by wearing whatever he wanted to do. But anyway, the president of El Salvador during this meeting, the United States government said that they don't have the ability to bring this person back, which I think is just an absolute just absolute lie. I mean, if you're paying a country $3 million to house these folks, I mean, you can just do what the United States do all the time and just bully them. Say if you if you don't send this person back, I won't send you the money or whatever. However way y'all do things, it just tells you how unserious they are, or serious depending on how you feel about the situation. But I say they're unserious about actually following the law and actually doing what's right. To say that we sent someone there, you are housing this person on our dime, but we have no authority to bring this person back. The authority is you do what I say because I'm paying. So that is a case is already made it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, they ruled that the United States needed to actively try to get them back.
9-0. 9-0.
Well, 9-0. That the United States had to actively get him back. But what I think is interesting is the Trump administration is saying that this is foreign affairs, and the United States Supreme Court only has authority on things that happen within the United States. So once this person leaves our borders, the Supreme Court has no authority in other countries. So they're kind of using like that type of like gray area to be able to do what they know was incorrect. They even said in their filings that they picked him up mistakenly, that
Clerical error.
he was not, yeah, clerical error. And then they tried to backtrack it, and then another person reiterated that it was a clerical error. And what did they do? They fired. They fired the person who just repeated what he was told. But it just lets you know just kind of how serious they are about their objectives, and their objectives is to, in my opinion, to demonize Black and brown people and to separate them from the American society and American culture. But Trump did say something that was interesting. He said that he would like to start sending American citizens to El Salvador, what he called the worst of worst criminals. He would like for those American citizens to be sent to El Salvador also. I think it's something that we need to make sure that we pay attention to, because sending our citizens, even if they are convicted of crimes, they still have due process, they still have rights. Sending them to a foreign country means that their lawyers probably can't visit them, their family can't visit them, they can't probably have any communication with the outside world if they're in a foreign country. And a foreign country may not even have the same type of laws and just humanitarian efforts that we have in order to protect that population. And however you feel about that population, they're still human. But I think even more so from a Black person's perspective, I'm an abolitionist when it comes to incarcerating people, for a lot of reasons. But the biggest reason is the police historically have not always been right. The police have historically done things to make Black and brown people appear to be guilty. The police have been corrupt. They have put charges on people that were totally innocent, and the criminal justice system has too many holes and too many flaws to be sending people to some strange country. But Trump said he's looking into the law to see if he can at some point start sending some of our American citizens to jails in El Salvador. So
Couple
you know
couple things before you move on to the next thing. What I thought was interesting about what you just mentioned. So the president of El Salvador was here, who he's called himself, or he's been coined, the world's coolest dictator, which is
right.
insane. He was here speaking with 40 President Trump about Mr. The guy from Florida. I'm sorry, I don't want to mess up his name. I'm not looking at it. Speaking about him and how he don't have the authority to bring him back. You flew from El Salvador. He could have just got on a plane with you. That's that's number
Well,
one.
what I think is crazy, B, is it's almost like they're playing in our face, right?
And, and
Like,
and that's another thing. I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but that
but
was my second point, is that it feels like it's a test to the other thing you alluded to, where okay, let's just take this guy and see what type of backlash we get, to see how it would go if we decide to send what they determine is violent criminals, which I don't really feel comfortable at all with the government determining what violent criminals are, based on what you said, how historically the United States treats Black and brown people. I don't want them making the determination on what a violent criminal is and who's worthy of being sent to El Salvador, to who knows what's going to happen. If they are able to get that off, who's to say that, hey, we're sending these people to El Salvador, and if they go missing, we won't say anything. Like, eventually it'll get there. So
right,
it's just all
absolutely.
a mess. But go ahead and move on to your next thing.
Yeah, I mean, but just to piggyback off of your point, I think that is definitely a test subject to see what the American people will stomach, what the American
Mm,
people will accept, and if that's something that we accept, then the oops, I sent them there, we can't get them back. That would be something that they would just constantly do. And
mhm.
now we're not even talking about this person doesn't even have the ability to appeal, so that person is just there. And as far as we know, they're just there forever.
Yeah,
Like they're not even going through an actual court proceeding.
no
They're
due
just being sent
process.
there with no
Right.
due process. So there's no mechanism for them to get parole. There's no record. There's none of that. I mean, it's really, hopefully in 4 years, um, the country is not so bad and terrible that we can get some leaders in here that have some sense. But I think within the next 4 years, if anybody's there, they're gonna be there.
Yeah.
They're not coming home. So if Trump can imagine the percentage of Black people that are in prison, I think the federal prison system has, like, I think 400,000 inmates, and I'm sure a large majority of them are Black. Imagine if they just sent half of them just away to just never be seen or heard from again. I mean, it's just
Right.
it's just a total miscarriage of justice. But stay tuned with that. That is just a very interesting kind of conversation that Trump was having about sending American citizens to a jail in El Salvador.
Mhm.
The next thing I wanted to talk about was Harvard University. So Harvard
Mhm.
University, they their federal grant money was taken from them, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 billion. And big number, much bigger than the 700 million from Columbia University. But
Hmm.
Columbia University decided that they were going to implement some of these changes that the Trump administration wanted them to, to apply to their university. Harvard said, "No bueno, we're not doing anything." Now, Harvard is one of the few schools that can take that type of hit and still
They
keep
can
ticking.
afford, right?
Yeah, their endowment, which means that
Ridiculous.
the cash that they have in their hand as a university is somewhere in the 60 billion dollars. So they have enough to be able to withstand, and I think they're going to try to play the long game. We have enough
Hmm.
to possibly take this hit for the next 4 years, and like I said, in 4 years, hopefully some people have some sense. But what was interesting is what the Trump administration wanted Harvard to do and what their kind of complaints about Harvard was. One of the things that the Trump administration stated in their letter was that they felt like the students and the faculty had too much control over what was happening in the school, and that the administrators did not. That the school had turned into more activism than scholarship.
Hmm.
So that was one of their complaints. Obviously, Harvard doesn't feel that kind of way. Ultimately, what the administration wanted to do was they wanted to have control over what Harvard researches, what they teach, who they hire, from the janitor all the way to the top administrator, to the dean of the school.
Mm.
Pretty much making Trump the president of Harvard, which is ridiculous when you think about it. That administration would make those types of changes to a
Concessions, right?
university, right? And Harvard has been around. I want to say 130 years before the United States was around. Harvard, I think was started, and somebody could fact check me on this, but I think Harvard was started in 1637 or somewhere in that realm, and the United States wasn't even in existence. We're talking about 1776. So Harvard, first university, they've been around forever. Harvard has had less presidents than the United States. That just tells you how exclusive of a company that Harvard is. Um, but the Trump administration pretty much wanted to control Harvard, and Harvard has been the first school to not bend the knee to the Trump administration. So really shout out to Harvard for taking that stand. What's important about this is I think this gives other schools the ability to maybe even make some of these hard choices themselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, Harvard is in a position where they're they can be they're self-sustaining, so they can go without the grants. However, there are going to be some things that are going to change. Some research is not going to get done. It's going to affect them. But I think it's important that they did not bend the knee, because they are the biggest, most profitable university in the world.
Yeah.
So I would say we should stay tuned to that. The Trump administration has already attempted to take away Harvard's tax exemption. Like, they just petty.
Yeah.
like they just petty. So they're trying to, and they probably have a list of things that they're going to try to do to get folks to bend to their will. I mean, and I think it's just
Absolutely.
interesting when you look at how money, funding, and and things of that nature that this administration is using to able to control people, to be able to
Yeah.
control people's thoughts, to be able to control what people teach. And that's not how this world works. But I imagine we all kind of feel like or felt like that probably is how this world works. Unfortunately, money is the driver of a lot of bad shit
Hmm.
in this country and in the world. Money is a driver.
It's like they're trying to make a real life algorithm. like like, hey, you're not doing what we want you to do. We're going to take your tax exempt status and be petty in other ways until you fall into what we want to show you and what we want you to do.
Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.